Hello, everybody. Hello, HubSpot users, RevOps admins, lovers. I just saw Dharmesh's post earlier today that HubSpot is ranked number 2 on Time's list of the best companies, which is super exciting to see that we are playing that community. Tony, how are you doing today?
Yeah, very good. Absolutely. I saw that as well. And, yet more accolades for HubSpot. They do a lot right. And I don't know, they seem to be on this wave. Matt Bolian's called it the orange wave. They still seem to be surfing that wave. Yeah. More power to them, more power to us in the ecosystem, and more power to the users. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. To those of you who might not know Tony, which we're just joking that everyone should know him already. But if anyone doesn't know who Tony is, he's the adoption guy, the adoption gap guy. Tony, really. What I really find interesting around your, let's say, at least LinkedIn presence is that you just keep repeating that, which is still a huge challenge to solve. And then there's a lot to talk about. And then the reason why I invited you to join me today for the individualization playbook is if no one is using it, or if you have a huge adoption gap in HubSpot, it's hard to do a good job on top of that. If you don't have the data, if you don't have users using it, not relying on the data within HubSpot, everything else will be harder. You won't have the good context for contacts. You won't have it up to date and so forth. So not to complicate and then do a too long intro, what are the kind of metrics, data, KPIs you look at first when you get into discussion with HubSpot user around adoption gap? How do you spot that?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. I think that a good place to start a conversation about adoption. And I think it's interesting. We moved to this spot like a year, 18 months ago, where we focused on adoption for lots of reasons, which I won't go on into now, but it's kind of my personal mission is to empower businesses with HubSpot, right? So when I realized that many people weren't adopting it properly and therefore weren't getting the benefits, I was moved to take the steps that we've taken and develop the systems that we've delivered. So what do you see? The first thing is most businesses know when there's an adoption gap. They don't necessarily have to look at metrics. They don't necessarily have to deep dive. They just know. They feel it, I guess. But what we see when we jump into a portal is the first clear sign is poor data hygiene. So I'm a believer in the fact that salespeople particularly should own the records that they own, as in they should be responsible for the state of those records. So one of the big giveaways is a huge amount of records that don't have an owner. That's a massive giveaway. And then if they have got owners, when you go into those and you've got poor fill rates on the properties. So one of the things we asked the company we're working with to do is to give us their MVP. Give us the minimum level of data that they require. And for some, really simple businesses, it's first name, last name, and email address, which is great. But for others, there are more, there are 10, a dozen, 20 properties that they have to have. Industry is always the one that nobody's got, and the industry is always the problematic one. So first thing would be to run through how many people actually own the records, and second, see what the fill rates for those records are. But beyond that, we can see quite a few things. One of the dead giveaways for sales is activity. So you'll often see your charts, your activity charts, your prospecting activities or completed activities in the sales analytics, and they'll show a clear leader, and mid-pack, and then sort of laggards, people at the bottom. And the question is simply, what's going on with those guys? And often, I don't understand, because they're a great seller. they're on target. Okay, so immediately we know they're not using HubSpot. The other thing is you can potentially, it's a simple one, but you go into the users in your settings and you see when people last logged in. And that is pretty brutal. So you'll see somebody hasn't been in there for 2 months or 6 months or something, that is absolutely a problem. So yeah, there's a feel thing there for sure, but there are, fingerprints or lack of fingerprints, Clement, perhaps a lack of fingerprints would be a better way to describe it. You know, there's no notes in the records. Activities are few and far between. Maybe they haven't logged in recently. Those kinds of things just point to this. You would be amazed how many people know, I would think, how many people know that adoption is poor. They know their sales teams don't like to play. They know they don't fill them out properly. They know they have, you know, issues with the data. They know there is some sort of adoption gap, which is one of the reasons why we decided to try and fix it.
Yeah. Two thoughts coming to my mind. One is, I like how you start with data hygiene and not, you know, which paid features or whatever features are not utilized. This is the second step. I would totally agree. And you start, you know, that they fill it. I would maybe pause here a bit and, you know, try to dig deeper. How do they fill it? You described a bit, you know, but this is how you identify and confirm their feelings. How are they describing? Why do they feel it?
Do you know the number one? Well, there's probably two equally. One, they know reps don't do it, because a lot of reps will tell them, I hate the CRM. And some companies are still, you know, in this process of asking people to update the CRM at the end of the day or at the end of the week or something like that, right? And therefore they know that it hasn't been done. They know the salesperson has put it off, or oh, I've got this call. I'll do my CRM hygiene tomorrow. So they know. But the predominant feeling, I think, is one of distrust. So this is the craziest part for me of the adoption gap, right? As a leader, you don't trust the data, but you keep using it. This absolutely blows my mind. Right? So, you know, you're looking at these forecasts and you think, well, I can't trust it. What I'll do is I'll take 20% off, or I'll add 20% on. Or you look at the activity records and you go, well, I know they're not filling out their meetings properly. So it's like we use this kind of this fudge. We use a bit of intuition and a bit of insight to the data's wrong. The data's wrong. You don't trust it, so don't use it. You know, or let's get it right. And this is why I always start with the data hygiene. And I think I've been banging on about data for 30 years in one form or another. It wasn't 10 years ago I built a data warehouse for my company. We built a data dictionary for, we did all of the things, right? And today is the first time I see people starting to take it seriously. Not people like you who have always been interested in it, but businesses themselves. And I think it's been driven by AI, because I think we're suddenly realizing the potential of data. So people like yourself and maybe me, who were able to see the potential previously, are now seeing it in real terms. When I look at your dashboard, your data hygiene dashboards and things, you can see exactly what's going on, right? It gives you the best feel for the data that I've ever seen. You know who's real, you know who's verified, and all these things. Now we're taking it seriously, I think. And we haven't before. And that's what I mean by, I don't trust my CRM, but I'm still going to use it. It's just insane to me. It's absolutely crazy that we have this scenario.
Yeah, interesting. And I would definitely agree with you that now, because of AI, companies are going from, yes, I know the hygiene is important, but I don't want to spend any resources on that because it doesn't really hurt me, or I don't see the potential of cleaning it up, and I don't want to do it for the sake of good hygiene. To the realization, hey, if you want to be AI ready for whatever that means down the road, we'll need to clean our data first.
Yes.
And I see that with a lot of our users. I have concrete cases, not even at the basic stuff we already discussed around job titles and industry and so forth, but even down the road. An interesting case, before we go further, we had a case. We were writing emails for close loss revival, and there was, in activity timeline, a meeting logged, not the outcome. They're not updating it, but there was a note that the meeting happened. So one of the AI note takers they're using, you have a note from that. And then you have an email that says, hey, thanks for meeting. And then the close lost happened. So the deal was moved to close lost. And the reason for close lost by the same rep was picked. The prospect didn't show up at a call. I mean, this is really down the road data hygiene. But back to your point of, do you trust the data? In the reporting, you won't take the activity timeline details, but you will take that one property. Yeah. So then, you will be reviewing and saying, okay, 50% of our deals are lost because people don't show up at a call, which is not the case.
Now, I'm starting to develop thinking around this. It's been nagging at me for quite a long time. So I'm one of those people who believes in simplicity, in simplification, right? It's one of the reasons why we named our process Simplify process. I don't believe complexity in business is useful. And I do wonder why we measure some of the things we measure as sales leaders. So this is the story I always tell. Just go with me on it. It's not perfect, but it sort of illustrates the point, right? When I was a sales manager and a sales director, there was one measure that I looked at, only one measure, and that was the number of presentations or asks for cash, if you like, that my sales team were making. Okay, and honest to goodness, I argued till I was blue in the face. With everybody seemed to have an opinion on it, and nobody seemed to agree with me. And the reason I measured just that one measure was because it allowed me a diagnosis. It allowed me a general health picture. So if I could see a salesperson was making too few or too many, that was one thing. But I could also see trends. I could also see what was going on. I could see when they were having a good time or a bad time. And it allowed me then to dive deep into problems before they became problems, right? So these are classic like leading indicators. And these are indicators that are going to demonstrate what your revenue will be. Okay. Mm-hmm. Whereas revenue are lagging measures. You can see what your revenue was. Looking at your revenue as was, it's not really doing an awful lot to tell you about what's coming down the pipe, right? Whereas, so it's not the only measure. And when I dive, and this is why I love CRM, because I can dive deep and I can see everything that I need. I can see the calls, I can see the meetings, I can go into the timelines, like you said, right? I can really get that color. But most of the businesses we deal with are awash with data. Just because you can measure something doesn't mean you should. Yeah. And information is nothing without insight. Okay. So if you've got 3 custom dashboards with 10 reports on each of them, and you're just looking at the dashboards, what difference does it? If it's not making a difference to you as a manager, as a leader, or to your organization, there's no point in looking at them. Have them by all means, But we really need to get clarity in our business about what drives, what moves the needle, as we used to say, right? What drives the business forward? And that might be 1 or 2 or 3 measures. This is the heart of our approach, the adoption gap approach. So think of that as your strategic objectives. These are the big things we want to do. And what by big things I'm talking about, grow revenue by 25%. Right? That's a strategic objective. There are loads of things that we need to do to ensure we deliver that. But as a leader, I'm going to look at the revenue growth number, and I'm going to be able to track that against the objective, and I'm going to know whether we win or losing. What one number, or maybe 2 or 3, as I said. Yeah. So I'm really passionate about this, but I can talk to you about it, but I don't quite know how to put it across. As I say, it's part of our process to simplify and to reduce the inputs so that managers can think more clearly. And this is why I feel like, sorry, Clement, I'm ranting on about it. This is why I feel like so many leaders feel what they do. They don't have any science behind it, right? They are, I'm going to use another term, they are unconsciously competent. They're good at what they do as leaders, but they don't really know why. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the ability necessarily to translate that into the data. So that's the real trick, connect the data to success. Mm-hmm. And then you're just looking at that data.
Yeah. I'll just put, hey, Nico. just to relate to it. So Nico is commenting, I never understand the behavior in companies when it comes to reporting. If you feel like the data is wrong and it's not telling the right story, stop reading the same poorly written book. Edit, rewrite it, anything but keep trying to use it. Yes.
It's so right. And you know, the number of times I've been in QBRs or just calls, just discovery calls, and people say, oh, you know, that we look at that report, but we know it's not quite. Well, don't look at that then. Or fix it or whatever.
I've seen, you know, then spending 2 days before you want to write a report or make a report, turning and massaging the numbers until they show you the story you want to tell. And this is some wrong approach to everything.
Sorry, go on.
I like with your approach is really, you know, you need to ask the hard questions. Mm-hmm. What are the KPIs that are truly actionable for your business?
So on that massage point, right? This is, so you're talking about something, again, I see all of the time, right? You're talking about something called confirmation bias. This is basic human psychology. We are programmed, right, from, you know, caveman to find data to support the things we already believe. This is an evolutionary shortcut, okay? This allows us to make gut decisions and then to follow them through, not just to sit there like trembling in a completely useless state. I can't decide. You know, we see data and we go, yeah, that confirms my suspicion. We've even got terminology for it. That confirms my suspicion, right? It's called confirmation bias. So when you're looking at reports and massaging, what I find people are actually doing is looking for numbers that support the thing they already believe about the salesperson, about that line, about the forecast, about anything else. And when it doesn't quite add up to what they believe, that's when the massage begins. Oh, well, actually, if I take that forecast out, because, you know, that salesperson is they're left-handed, you know, left-handed people, they don't forecast very well, you know. If I take that one out, that sits for where I want to be. Okay, so this confirmation bias is massive. Now, and again, what happens is people have not been statistically trained to read reports, to understand spreadsheets, to understand things like data distribution, standard deviations, and all these kinds of things. There's almost no point in them looking at reports at that level. I'd rather show them a metric that's going to give them, again, that big needle swing, you know. I would look, I'm sure you would as well. I look at a spreadsheet, I see the raw data. I'm trained to understand what it's telling me. I'm trained to gather insight from that information. Otherwise, it's just information. And when people aren't trained, they get all sorts of crap out of this data, you know. And again, this is why our process is so tight. What are your 3 KPIs, 5 at max, you know? What are the biggies? What are the strategic objectives we're after you? I'd prefer 1. Yeah. You can't, as a business, you can't have more than 1 priority. You know, when people have 5, 15, 20 priorities, the term itself means 1. You can only have 1 priority, right? So what's your 1 priority? It's revenue growth. Okay, great. How are we going to achieve that? And then what are we going to do to achieve those things? And then how do we know the things that we are doing are working? That's what you need, right? That's our process in a nutshell. What is it you want to achieve? How are you going to achieve it? And how are you going to know whether you're doing it well enough to achieve it? And that's the relationship between the big numbers and the small numbers at the bottom. So we call it a management operating system. And those numbers, guess what? Those numbers are in HubSpot. So the point is to build that into HubSpot so you can see at a glance how well you're doing against those big strategy numbers. When you do that, then the management, the leadership are engaged in HubSpot. When that happens, the teams use HubSpot. That's what fixes the adoption. So it's not training, it's not more software, it's not entirely data hygiene, although that's an important part because you have to trust that data. But it is having leadership engaged in HubSpot and managing the business through HubSpot. Otherwise, why would I use it? I'm a salesperson, my manager doesn't look at it. What's the point? Sorry, Simon, I'm unloading loads of things on you.
I love it. I'm enjoying it as always, Tony. So all good. where I see kind of the opportunity is conveying that, as you said, now if the management is using it, if the reporting is one-on-ones are based on the data you can see and you store in HubSpot, then a sales rep will have the motivation to keep it clean.
Exactly.
Even though it's not directly linked to the commission. Their commission is based on revenue. But if your sales manager can spot you're struggling with something with just looking at that one KPI, which might be deals created or meetings held or proposals made, as you said, whatever is that truly the most reliable and most actionable metric.
Yeah.
If you have that right, everything else will be so much easier. So others can spot you're struggling, can help you, and then as you mentioned, you can go and dig deeper into why that KPI is not where it should be, and then you can spot everything else.
This is exactly it. This is it, and I likened it to spinning plates. They used to see these performers on TV, and they'd have these poles, and they'd keep all the plates spinning all at the same time, and they may have a dozen plates spinning, right? So that's your manager. And what happens is one of the plates starts to wobble, so the performer pays attention to that specific plate wobble. That's exactly what we're doing with HubSpot. KPIs are green across the screen. You've got an amber, so you can dive in. And then if you need to, dive deep. That's absolutely fine. But I don't need to dive deep on a daily basis to keep all the plates. The plates are spinning. Everything's working great. There's so much cultural aspect to this. This measurement problem. I think we just got blinded by the amount of information that's available to us. But we don't need information. We need insight. Information is nothing without insight. It's just data. It's just raw information. So as a sales leader or even a business leader, you need to have insight into your organization. That comes from understanding which ones are the most important. And say that for me, that's what drives adoption system. Exactly as you said, right? I used to sit there 2012, 2015 with my reps going through, as a HubSpot user myself, going through their pipelines, going through their records, going through their forecasts. I think I'm going to do a HubSpot mastery course, which takes 5 weeks. It's fantastic, really popular. People love it, which is I'm very grateful for. The next one's in September. Plug for my HubSpot mastery course. I think I'm going to do one for sales managers, because I don't think we do enough to teach sales managers how to use HubSpot to manage your sales team. And you've got the performance workspace and you've got the sales manager's performance workspace now, which is a fantastic start. But it's more than that. How do you gain insight from these numbers? How do you tell that your plate is wobbling? How do you tell that your rep is starting to lose pace or is being affected by something outside of the business or what else? There's so much you can do as a sales manager in HubSpot. It's not funny, and I don't think we're training people to do it. Sorry, Clement, my son's just appeared as well.
Okay.
Just to let you know, is Jacob's throat bad?
Yes.
Jacob's not going around tonight?
I don't know. He probably is. I got to talk to my friend, okay?
Right.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you too. Alex has been on so many of my lives, you wouldn't believe it. It just happened at the right time. He walks in and asks this question.
Yeah. I had that with kids all the time. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I think this is the luxury of working at home.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I used to work in London. It was like 3 hours away from where I am. I never saw my family. And now they can just walk in and talk to me, which is amazing.
Yeah. Before we wrap up for today, and there are topics we can talk about for hours. Let's go to the end of bridging the adoption gap. What are those aha moments, the real success stories that you're seeing? So you can share some light on the value that you see when you help them go on the other side.
Yeah, I love the aha moments that we get, and I think this is why I'm so passionate about training as well, because I mentioned it's not training. It's a course about training. It's about enabling and empowering people to do things. But when you start to see the results you've promised as a salesperson, because I'm a HubSpot salesperson in a way, I'm certainly my agency salesperson. And when you see the customer, have that moment of realization, have that enable, you can see it, it's a spark. They suddenly go, and they appreciate. As a for instance, right, on the course I just mentioned, I just went across over lists with the team. There was about 4 of them in the lesson, and honest to God, there were 2 of them who didn't know what lists were. It absolutely blew my mind. Right, they didn't know what lists were because of adoption, right? Because they've not used them, they've not been told to use them, they've not been trained, and we went through this, and you could just see all of these pieces falling into place. That's what I'm looking for, you know. And again, just to be really clear, you know, adoption doesn't mean you use lists or anything. It doesn't mean you use all of HubSpot. It means you use the bit of HubSpot that makes your job easy. And as the, you know, it is vast, it is complex, and more complex than ever today. Don't be afraid just to create your workflow and train your team on your workflow. So the steps we would take: talk to the sales manager, create an SOP. They probably don't have a standard operating procedure for a thing. We'll document that SOP, which we usually put into Supered, which I'm sure you know about anyway. So there's documentation available in the portal. And then I train their salespeople on the SOP that they created, because they probably didn't have one before then. And then the salespeople seeing how this does make their job easier. A salesperson seeing, I'm on a call, I've got HubSpot open in front of me, I'm sending an email, or I've received an email, I've got HubSpot open in front of me. I go from the call to create a deal, I go from the deal into the quotes tool, I build the quote for the customer, I send the quote off. Seamless. This is all seamless. This is all happening. And the like, wow, the power of this is just phenomenal. And I'll add that into showing people a prospecting agent, showing people a content agent, showing people remix. It's just, you know, these big ahas are what drives me to drive the adoption. And that's when you know it's really working. You know, when you get feedback from teams, this is fantastic. We didn't know this existed. It's making our job so much easier, because that's what it's for.
Yeah. Hey, Amir.
Cheers. I mean, I'm not sure what that means. It's something about a dog, but yes, very good. I think that's an Americanism. I think, yes.
Yeah.
I appreciate the support.
I guess. Yeah, I think that's a really good kind of a conclusion of, you know, where it goes, and just my thought on that, it's probably not the adoption is happening through time, and it's not like one moment in time where you say, okay, now we adopted it. It's okay, now we understand the value of the adoption, and then we'll need to keep working. It's not a one-time thing that, you know, okay, I installed HubSpot, or this is one-time thing, but adopting and the whole adoption is a process that I think, you know, constantly need to think about. And even when you are, I would say, fully adopted to using HubSpot, data hygiene, you know, training of people needs to be still on place. Otherwise, you know, in 2 months' time of not thinking about it, you will be lost as you were 4 months ago.
And it's the same applies to everything within your business. Most businesses we deal with are chaotic, right? They are almost successful by accident. They probably have a very strong product market fit, and they get away with murder, as we would put it, and they sell things, right? Big businesses have codified, have systemized, have processed everything in their organization so that it happens sequentially, in order, in a sensible amount of time, right? So they turned their business into a process map. HubSpot supports the process map. Okay, so in terms of delivering what your business needs to deliver, you build it into a CRM. Now, if you leave people to their own devices, whatever it is they're doing, they get distracted, they get interrupted, things present themselves, problems get issued. And this is another sign of a poorly run organization. If your organization is solving the same problems over and over and over again, you know you have a serious issue. If, like, oh God, this happened last month and the month before and the month before, you have a serious issue, right? Because you are not systemizing anything within your organization. You are, as one of my mentors used to say, stepping over pounds to pick up pennies, stepping over dollars to pick up cents, or whatever you needed to do, right? So this is why the adoption is absolutely crucial. It isn't one and done. It's ongoing. It's your business's operating system. You keep training people. On balance, the best trained sales team wins every single time. So you train them on closing, opening the sale, negotiation, understanding human psychologies, all these amazing things, and data hygiene, and why it's important, and why it's important, and why it's important, and how to make sure that the pipeline, how to read their own activities. You've got to constantly train people, otherwise they'll just deviate. They'll go off and do something different, because that's what we do. We all do it. And that's what management versus leadership, that's what management is about, keeping people on the path. And HubSpot supports you in keeping people on the path. It is the business's operating system. So 100%, Clement, underline that 3 times. Adoption is not one training session or one project with us. It is ongoing forever, because it's the way that you run your business.
And when you're lost, follow Tony on LinkedIn. He will make sure to remind you about the adoption.
I will.
He won't
Maybe
disappoint you.
not every day, but most days.
Every week, for sure.
Every week, absolutely.
Tony, thank you so much for joining me. As always,
pleasure.
a pleasure. Always super insightful. See you around.
Thank you very much. Great to speak.
Everyone else, take care and see you.